The Omnimatrix, or Omnitrix for short, is a device capable of transforming its wielder into any number of alien species. The Omnitrix, across its multiple iterations, served two primary functions. The first of which is as a peacekeeping tool, allowing one being to walk a mile in the shoes of another.
You are one of us. I am one of everybody.
Both metaphorically and literally. The second purpose is to revive any species that has gone extinct, acting proverbially as Noah's Ark.
The Omnitrix is Noah's Ark, and you are Noah.
How the Omnitrix collects alien DNA samples is by scanning them and sending that DNA to an artificial planet known as Primus. On Primus, there is a river of DNA known as the codon stream. The Omnitrix then acts as a wireless receiver, reading the codon stream and allowing the user to transform into any DNA sample from the codon stream. Within the Omnitrix, the alien DNA samples are arranged in playlists of sets of 10, with the Omnitrix starting with 10 aliens active in what is referred to as the active playlist. More aliens can be unlocked under many different circumstances, and as such, they are also added to the active playlist. Notable ways in which aliens can be unlocked includes manually inputting a code, or scanning an alien sample, whether the alien is already in the codon stream or not. Eventually, the prototype version of the Omnitrix would make its way to some backwater planet called Earth, where it would make its way onto the wrist of a 10-year-old boy named Ben Tennyson. When Ben would pick up the Omnitrix for the first time, the active playlist would have automatically loaded for him 10 random transformations. This would include Heat Blast, Wild Mutt, Diamond Head, Accelerate, Grey Matter, Forearms, Stinkfly, Ripjaws, Upgrade, and Ghost Freak. Ben and his cousin Gwen would interact with the Omnitrix, intending to have Ben transform into Accelerate, only for their interactions to accidentally input a code, unlocking a new 11th alien, Cannonbolt. As such, Ben, his supporting cast of Gwen and their grandfather Max, and us, the audience back in 2006, would learn that there were more than 10 aliens in the Omnitrix.
Who knows? There could be 100 more.
An additional factor as to why Cannonbolt may have been unlocked when he was, is that his species' home planet of Arborea was destroyed roughly a week prior to the events of the episode, perhaps acting as a secondary explanation as to why Ben unlocked Cannonbolt. Another additional note with Cannonbolt is that, in real life, Cannonbolt was intended to be one of the original 10 aliens, with Diamond Head instead intending to be the first additional alien. While interacting with the Omnitrix again, this time using a screwdriver, Ben would break off the Omnitrix's faceplate. As a result, the Omnitrix would be unable to facilitate its normal transformations, and would instead transform Ben into hybrid transformations, which would be good in theory, if it weren't for the fact that, due to the Omnitrix being damaged, Ben would receive the worst of both aliens. Of the 55 hybrids that Ben would have access to in this episode, only 3 would appear: Stink Arms, Diamond Matter, and Heat Jaws. Additionally, Ben would mention the hypothetical hybrids Diamond Mutt and XLR Freak. Additionally, a hybrid appears in the reboot that would hypothetically be available here, named Grey Arms. As such, that leaves 49 unnamed hybrids that are also available, but I won't be going into too much detail on. Additionally, most of these unnamed transformations, as well as Diamond Mutt and XLR Freak, would have their designs showcased in the online game Ben 10 DNA Lab. How this game would work is that while Season 3 was airing, toys of Ben's aliens would include a code. Inputting 2 of these codes into the online game would illustrate their merged hybrid form. This would include aliens that Ben unlocks in Season 3, but would not include Ripjaws or Grey Matter, although the latter does still have concept art for some hybrids. In the episode's climax, Ben would fix the Omnitrix by reattaching the faceplate mid-transformation, and as such, would go back to his normal 11 aliens. There is more to say with this episode, but I'll cover that over the next 2 episodes. The way that ectoneurites work is that their consciousness can reside within a single strand of DNA. As such, given that Ghost Freak is a genetic duplicate of a real ectoneurite named Zeskare, Zeskare can remotely access Ghost Freak, and every time that Ben had transformed into Ghost Freak, Zeskare would be possessing him on some small level.
Ben, you okay?
Oh man, that was even weirder than when I normally go Ghost Freak.
Now that we get to this episode, Zeskare has finally built up enough strength to finally break free from the Omnitrix, removing himself from the Omnitrix, and by extension, Ben's ability to transform into Ghost Freak. An additional note is that Ghost Freaked Out takes place before Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray in both air date and production order, but as you may remember, Ben mentions Ghost Freak, or rather his hybrid form XLR Freak, under the context that he still has him.
Ben?
I was thinking maybe I could rig this thing so that I could become even more cool combinations whenever I want. You know, like Diamond Mud or Axillar Freak.
Granted, this may be a slip up on Ben's part, but I'm taking this to mean that Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray takes place before Ghost Freaked Out. Whether that means moving Ghost Freaked Out after Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray, or moving Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray before Ghost Freaked Out, and what either means for the episodes in between, I'll leave for you to decide. I have seen the option once before though, to just simply swap the 2 episodes around. While battling a giant plant monster named Mycelium, the Omnitrix would spontaneously unlock a new alien for Ben, named Wildvine. While the episode presents Wildvine's unlocking as spontaneously, I'm personally under the impression that the Omnitrix specifically unlocked Wildvine so that Ben would have a way to communicate with Mycelium, as Wildvine was able to communicate with Mycelium, whereas Ben couldn't as a human. An additional reason as to why Wildvine may be available is that the original Florunner that was scanned to add Wildvine to the Omnitrix was possessed by Zeskare at the time, inadvertently scanning him as well and adding Ghost Freak. As a result of Zeskare's removal from the Omnitrix, and by extension Ghost Freak's, their DNA was no longer overriding the Florunner DNA, and therefore unlocked Wildvine. If that's how that works, that is. As I mentioned before, the chronological order of episodes in the latter half of Season 2 is kind of ambiguous, and as such, there could be a period in which Ben has access to both Ghost Freak and Wildvine. Additionally, there's a chance that Ben has Wildvine during the events of Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray, and as a result, may have had access to Wildvine hybrids. While interacting with the Omnitrix, 10-year-old Ben does this a lot during Season 2, Ben would accidentally access Master Control, removing the Omnitrix's built-in timer and allowing Ben to telepathically quick change between aliens on a whim.
Upgrade. Whoa, what happened?
Unbeknownst to Ben, however, is that he would also have access to the approximately 1 million other aliens within the Omnitrix. At the climax of the episode, backed into a corner, Ben would be forced to give the Omnitrix to the 2 villains, Vilgax and Kevin 11. Before doing so, however, Ben would lock Master Control, limiting the Omnitrix to just 11 aliens. Don't worry, Ben would get the Omnitrix back at the end of the episode. In this episode, Ben would get attacked by a werewolf-like alien called a Laboan. The unnamed Laboan would scratch the Omnitrix while it was in capture mode, sampling the DNA and unlocking the transformation, Benwolf. Note that the original intent was that the encounter with the Laboan would be the Omnitrix's first encounter with the species, But there would be a later retcon that the DNA had already been in the Omnitrix, and Ben's encounter would simply bring Ben Wolf to the active playlist. An additional note with Ben Wolf is that in his second appearance in Omniverse Season 5, Episode 4, An American Ben Wolf in London, he would be officially renamed Blitzwolfer.
So you couldn't even change into Ben Wolf if you wanted to.
Oh, I can. I just choose not to. And anyway, I don't call him Ben Wolf anymore. His name is, Blitzwolfer.
Blitzwolfer?
Yes, there are roughly 7 years between Ben Wolf's first two appearances, both in-universe and real life. Also, yes, Blitzwolfer is now named after real-life journalist Wolf Blitzer. Because all the kids in the audience are perfectly aware of who that is. In this episode, Ben would get attacked by a mummy-like alien called a Thep-Kufan. The unnamed Thep-Kufan would wrap its hand around the Omnitrix while it was in capture mode, sampling the DNA and unlocking the transformation Snarrow. Note that the original intent was that the encounter with the Thep-Kufan would be the Omnitrix's first encounter with the species, but there would be a later retcon that the DNA had already been in the Omnitrix, and that Ben's encounter would simply bring Snarrow to the active playlist. An additional note with Snarrow is that he originally had the name Ben Mummy, but he would later be renamed Snarrow. Given that he's never called Ben Mummy in-universe, we can assume that he was called Snarrow the whole time. Also, I should probably mention that at one point in the episode, Ghost Freak's hologram appears on the Omnitrix, but I feel like that doesn't mean anything, that's just an error, because logistically, why would Ghost Freak's hologram appear at this point in the series? In order to battle the episode's villain, the Mecha Droid, the Omnitrix's caretaker Xylene would manually unlock a new transformation for Ben that he would name Upchuck. One note with Upchuck is that he was originally part of a single species called the Gourmands, but Omniverse would retcon that there are two different subspecies of Gourmands. The Perk Gourmands, which appeared here in the original series, and the Merc Gourmands, who appear in Alien Force and Ultimate Alien. The Perks were named after original series character designer Tom Perkins, and were based on an amoeba, while the Mercs were named after Alien Force and Ultimate Alien executive producer Glenn Murakami, and were based on a frog. I probably should have elaborated that later on when Ben first uses Upchuck's Merc variation, but I'm doing it here just in case. I feel like it flows here better. More or less the same as Snarrow and Blitzwolfer. In this episode, Ben would get attacked by a Frankenstein's monster-like alien called a Transillion, with this Transillion being named Victor. Victor would wrap his hand around the Omnitrix while it was in capture mode, sampling his DNA and unlocking the transformation Frankenstrike. Note that the original intent was that the encounter with Victor would be the Omnitrix's first encounter with his species, but there would be a later retcon that the Transillion DNA had already been in the Omnitrix, and Ben's encounter with Victor would simply bring Frankenstrike to the active playlist. An additional note with Frankenstrike is that he originally had the name Ben Victor, but he would later be named Frankenstrike. Given that he's never been called Ben Victor in-universe, on screen at least, we can assume that he was called Frankenstrike the whole time. You know, aside from this writer's statement from Omniverse art director Derek J. Wyatt, which states that Ben would rename Ben Victor to Frankenstrike at some point while he was 11 years old, so roughly at some point during the Omniverse flashbacks and a year after the original series. Additionally, after destroying Zascare a second time, the Omnitrix would once again absorb his DNA and re-unlock Ghost Freak. An additional note to mention that I just remembered while recording is that in Air Date order, the Visitor comes after Be Afraid of the Dark, and so there's a chance that Ben unlocked Frankenstrike and Ghost Freak before he unlocked Upchuck. I would still put Upchuck first though. Ben would spontaneously unlock new alien Ditto. I feel it's noteworthy to mention that, even though I don't think it's likely, I think there's a slim possibility that Ben had Ditto prior to this episode and just didn't know it, but there's no evidence to suggest that, so he probably did unlock him here by accident, but, you know, just saying he might have had him prior to this, we don't know. At some point prior to this episode, Ben would unlock the new alien, Guy.
Note that we don't officially know how or why Guy was unlocked. All that we know is that he was unlocked at least by this point.
Note that there's a theory that the movie Secret of the Omnitrix takes place before the Ben 10 vs. the Negative 10 two-parter, and that Guy was unlocked there. But that's just a theory. Officially, the two-parter takes place before the movie. Additionally, I'm of the opinion that the Guy alternate opening for the movie is non-canon, and that the opening in which Ben uses Heat Blast is the canon opening, but that's just my opinion on that one.
Note that it's possible that Ben could have had Guy during seasons 3 and 4, and we just never knew, but we don't know for sure either way.
The creator of the Omnitrix, named Azimuth, would manually unlock the transformation way big. The fourth series Omniverse features numerous flashbacks to when Ben was 11 years old. Unfortunately, there isn't really a chronological order to all of these flashbacks. There's continuity between some, but for the most part, they can take place in more or less any order. As such, the two new aliens that Ben has available in these flashbacks are Feedback and Octiguana. Noteworthy to mention is that there is no official stance as to whether Feedback or Octiguana was unlocked first. That is my only note with Feedback here, with Octiguana having many, many notes. First of all, Octiguana's unlocking was depicted in the comic The Once and Future Ben, in which he would be manually unlocked by Ben 10,000. That being said, the comics are, as far as I'm aware or concerned, non-canon. Although Octiguana being unlocked in this manner isn't outside the realm of possibility. Another note with Octiguana is that we never explicitly see 11-year-old Ben transform into Octiguana, but we know that he has him unlocked based on two pieces of evidence. The first of which is that in Omniverse Season 3, Episode 5, Ben Again, 11-year-old Ben would mention that he has access to him, which is pretty concrete in itself.
Ben?
No worries, Gwen. I finally got an alien I know how to use.
The second of which is that in Omniverse Season 6, Episode 10, Weapon 11 Part 2's flashback, Kevin 11 transforms into his second Chimera form, based on the additional aliens that Ben unlocks over the course of the original series, as well as Octiguana. More on Kevin's second Chimera form later. Another note is that according to a writer's statement, Ben would have unlocked multiple other lame aliens in this time frame, including the canon alien Spitter, and non-canon aliens such as Somnambulizard or Skid Marks. On top of the fact that there's no acknowledgement within the shows of Ben having these aliens, and the fact that none of them appear in Kevin's second Chimera form, on top of other evidence I'll get to later, screams to me that Ben doesn't have Spitter or these non-canon aliens. One final fun fact is that both Octiguana and Spitter were born from concept art for Upchuck. To elaborate on Spitter being a canon alien, he is a canon alien within the show, we just never see him used by Ben Prime. He's only used by original series Ben 10,000. Also to elaborate, every show that does have Ben 10,000 in it, it's a different Ben 10,000 every time due to time travel shenanigans.
I feel like it's worthy to mention that Ben may or may not have also had Feedback or Octiguana during the original series, but we don't really have any way of knowing that.
During battle with the villain Malware, Malware would tear Ben from Feedback and disintegrate the transformation, removing him from the Omnitrix, and by extension, Ben's ability to transform into Feedback entirely.
If I am not mistaken, this seems to be your favorite alien, Ben Tennyson. Correct? Not anymore.
No!
Though I am here for Azimuth, I wish to destroy him with his most precious creation.
As a result of Feedback's violent removal from the Omnitrix, the current Omnitrix and all future Omnimatrix devices would be unable to facilitate Feedback's conductoid DNA. While battling the time travel-based villain Eon, Eon would swap the minds and bodies of 11-year-old Ben and 16-year-old Ben. At the climax of the episode, while battling Eon once again, Ben's ally, Professor Paradox, would instruct both Bens that they would need to use the alien clockwork to defeat Eon and fix the time stream. As such, the two Bens would synchronize their Omnitrices, and as 11-year-old Ben and 16-year-old Ben's body would transform into Clockwork, he would temporarily unlock Clockwork in the other Ben's Omnitrix. After defeating Eon, both Bens would return to their respective minds and bodies, and the events of the episode would be undone.
Without Eon to anchor them, all the separate eras of time are progressively snapping back into place.
Which means in a few seconds, none of this will have happened and we won't remember a thing.
You really are getting quite good at this, young Master Tennyson. Pity you'll have to start over.
Good seeing you. Me, again.
Yeah, me too.
As a result, Ben never unlocked Clockwork. That being said, Derek J. White would still argue that Ben would keep Clockwork, going as far as to include him in concept art for Kevin 11's second Chimera form. As much as I like the idea of 11-year-old Ben getting to keep Clockwork, I can acknowledge that logistically he shouldn't have Clockwork at this point in the timeline. At some point prior to this episode, the Scare would escape from the Omnitrix once again, removing Ben's ability to transform into Ghost Freak. Given that there is unofficial artwork of 11-year-old Ben as Ghost Freak, provided by Derek J. Wyatt, I'm inclined to believe that Ben losing Ghost Freak again happens at some point after the original series, some point during the Omniverse flashbacks, but again, it's entirely possible that he lost Ghost Freak immediately after Be Afraid of the Dark. After having removed the Omnitrix for a couple of years, Ben would put it back on his wrist, intending to return to the hero's life. As a result of the Omnitrix being turned off for a couple of years, it was hit with multiple updates at once, and as such, completely recalibrated. As a result of its recalibration, every alien that Ben had as a kid was locked, and in turn, he received 10 new aliens. Swampfire, Echo Echo, Humungosaur, Jetray, Big Chill, Chromastone, Brainstorm, Spider Monkey, Goop, and Alien X. Azimuth would grant Ben master control, giving him access to all 1,903 aliens available in the Omnitrix.
Access Master Control.
Master Control unlocked. Everything's unlocked? How many aliens can I turn into? 1,903 genetic samples available.
As such, Ben would use Cannon Bolt, Way Big, and Upchuck's Merc variation. After using all of the Omnitrix's power to save the day, the Omnitrix would reset. As a result, Ben would keep the 10 aliens that he's used all season, and in addition, he would re-unlock Way Big and Cannonbolt, and unlock Upchuck's Merc variation, likely as a result of using them while Master Control was active. Additionally, according to a writer's statement from Dwayne McDuffie, writer of Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, and if not for his passing Omniverse, Ben would also re-unlock Wildmutt. Well, at least according to the Ben 10 wiki, which does not provide a source, unfortunately. So maybe Ben doesn't have Wildmutt here. Maybe, possibly. I tried to do research, and yeah, some guy just added that Wildmutt was used off screen in this episode, and didn't provide a source. Because watching the episode, there's no indication that Ben uses Wildmutt.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
I'm still going to count Wildmutt as getting unlocked here, but note that it is kind of sketchy because not only is there no source here, but also there isn't even any acknowledgement that Ben has Wildmutt until Ultimate Alien Season 3. That's like years away. I'm too lazy to figure out when this episode came out, but that's like 2 or 3 years. Additionally, Ben would also unlock multiple new aliens, including Lodestar.
as well as multiple other aliens who we never see, and I will refer to as unknown aliens. I count roughly 4 aliens here, but I could easily see it being 3 or 5.
For one reason or another, the animators just simply didn't draw the aliens that would be here on the Omnitrix, and as such, it can be kind of hard to gauge how many aliens are actually being shown, and so that's why I'm a bit indecisive of whether it's 3 or 5 or 4, especially considering it's hard to tell how many times Ben is turning the Omnitrix enough to warrant a hologram showing up.
Additionally, I'm of the opinion that certain original series aliens were also re-unlocked here, but I'll specify them when relevant. During an encounter with a group of alien microchips, the Omnitrix would scan them, and instead of duplicating one of them for Ben to transform into, due to their lack of sapience, the Omnitrix would instead merge what little DNA they have with Ben's in order to create a new one-of-a-kind transformation called Nanomech. Derek J. Wyatt would instead interpret Nanomech to not be a hybrid with human DNA, but instead to be an evolved form of the microchips. Furthering this idea, Ben's alternate universe counterpart, Ben 23, would have the transformation Teeny Weeny, which, despite being a counterpart to Nanomech, is mentioned, albeit in a writer's statement, to be the species known as a nanomite, which in Ben 23's universe are a naturally occurring species. As such, it wouldn't be too outlandish to consider Nanomech the first nanomite in the Prime universe. For now, I'm considering him a human microchip hybrid, though. At some point prior to this episode, Ben would have re-unlocked Heat Blast under unknown circumstances. As evidenced by his hologram appearing and a confirmation from Duncan Rillo, one of the creators of Ben 10. I've seen a theory that Ben re-unlocked Heat Blast by scanning fellow Pyronite Alan Albright, but I personally don't believe that, but I also feel like it's worth mentioning.
I feel like it's worthy to mention that Heat Blast hologram also reuses Alan's model, hence leading to the credits that, oh, maybe it's not Heat Blast, oh, maybe it is Heat Blast because it's a Pyronite, but I'm of the opinion that it's 100% Heat Blast.
Furthermore, I'm also of the opinion that Ben re-unlocked Heat Blast in War of the Worlds Part 2. By extension, it's also possible that Ben had a Heat Blast during Alien's form. In order to combat Vilgax, Ben and Kevin, who is now a good guy, Ben's best friend, and Gwen's boyfriend, attempt to hack the Omnitrix in order to grant Ben master control. Unfortunately for them, they end up breaking the Omnitrix instead, resulting in some of Ben's transformations escaping the Omnitrix, as well as Kevin getting mutated again. Ben's aliens that escaped were Chromastone, Spider Monkey, Goop, and Waybig. Ben would manually recapture each of the escape transformations, beginning with Chromastone. And then Spider Monkey. And then Goop. And then finally Waybig. During Ben's battle with Vilgax, Vilgax would drain Ben, as Chromastone, of all of his energy, before bringing his sword down on our hero, shattering him to pieces. As Vilgax begins boasting of his victory, Chromastone's shards would reform around the Omnitrix, resulting in a new Crystal Sapien hybrid form for Diamond Head. Unfortunately, Ben would lose access to Chromastone, but as a result, some of Chromastone's abilities would carry over to Diamond Head's new form. I'm of the opinion that Ben re-unlocked base form Diamond Head in War of the Worlds Part 2, but there's no evidence for that, it's just a headcanon. During battle with Zeskare, the Ectoneurite would attempt to possess Ben, only for Ben to be ready for him, having activated capture mode, and as a result, when Zeskare possesses Ben, Ben would instead absorb him into the Omnitrix, re-unlocking Ghost Freak. At some point between now and Ghost Freak's next appearance, in Ultimate Alien Season 3, Episode 19, The Ultimate Sacrifice, Zascare and Ghost Freak would be separated, and as such, Ben can transform into Ghost Freak without fear of Zascare's influence. Upon being tasked to transport the Llewellyn Prince, the Omnitrix would react negatively to his presence, and as such, would transform Ben into a new alien, Wrath. Okay, this one's kind of weird and undefined. Ben's ally and fellow Petrosapien, named Tetrax Shard, arrives on Earth, demanding that Ben give him Chromastone.
You? Ben Tennyson, give me Chromastone!
When Ben transforms into Diamond Head, who, to reiterate, is now a Crystal Sapien hybrid, Tetrax uses a sonic weapon to break him apart, revealing that Chromastone is hiding within Ben's Crystal Sapien Diamond Head form. Has he been there the whole time? Kinda weird if so. We then get the exposition that Chromastone's DNA source Sugilite is a living backup drive for Diamond Head and Tetrax's destroyed home planet of Petropia, as well as all of its inhabitants. Throughout the episode, everyone keeps referring to Sugilite as Chromastone, and it's kind of weird.
Then again, I guess it's not the weirdest thing in the world, considering that they don't call Zascare until, like, Omniverse, because they keep calling him Ghost Freak, and he keeps answering to Ghost Freak.
Then, during the episode's climax, Sugilite successfully revives Petropia before being killed by Vilgax. But then Ben, as Diamond Head, uses Sugilite's crystal to revive the Petrosapien race, as well as Sugilite. Sugilite then tells Ben that Chromastone is still in the Omnitrix.
Chromastone. He is still in your Omnitrix.
Now that's all weird in and of itself, but the relevant takeaway should be that Ben unlocked Chromastone. That being said, given that Chromastone's hologram appears at the beginning of the episode, and given Sugilite's statement at the end, I think that there's a decent case to be made that Ben never lost Chromastone against Vilgax. I don't know if I believe that 100%, but I can see the bones of an argument forming.
Another point arguing against the idea that Ben lost Chromastone is that this isn't even the only time that Ben has died as Chromastone. Ben would die again in Ultimate Alien Season 3, Episode 25, Friend of Me or My Enemy, and yet would keep Chromastone.
Don't worry, Ben would get better. Additionally, the Ben 10 wiki makes two claims that I kind of want to address. The first of which is that the Sugilite we follow for most of the episode is actually a duplicate, while also being Ben's transformation Chromastone, somehow separate from Ben, and that while Chromastone is killed by Vilgax during the episode's climax, it's the original Sugilite who we see at the end, apparently having been destroyed with Petropia before the events of the series, and now revived by Ben. That being said, watching the episode doesn't really convey that, and I feel it works better with the initial explanation that I gave, with Sugilite just being inside Diamond Head somehow, and everyone calling him Chromastone until he dies, gets revived, and then corrects them. The other claim that the Ben 10 wiki makes is that following this episode, it's unclear if Diamond Head remains a Crystal Sapien hybrid or not. Personally, I would argue he does stay a hybrid based on two factors. A, his design doesn't change at all, and B, it's literally only the next episode when Diamond Head demonstrates one of Chromastone's abilities. Granted, it wouldn't be the first time that episodes work better out of order. After destroying the Omnitrix in order to keep it out of Vilgax's hands, Ben would approach his half-clone, Albedo, whom Vilgax had betrayed and taken prisoner. In Albedo's possession is the Ultimatrix, another Omnimatrix device that allows the wielder to take their alien transformations and evolve them, or go ultimate.
It's not a knockoff. It's the Ultimatrix, and it's a definite improvement over the original. Wanna see? Not only can I transform into anything you can, but I can also evolve those creatures to their ultimate form. Right! Ultimate Humongosaur!
In order to replace the Omnitrix, Ben would take the Ultimatrix from Albedo, which would be synchronized to the Omnitrix, keeping the same aliens available. On top of that, Ben now has ultimate forms for each of his transformations, although of his 20 to 24 aliens at the moment, we only see 9 ultimate forms, and even then one of them isn't used by Ben. As such, Ben has access to Ultimate Swampfire, Ultimate Spider Monkey, Ultimate Big Chill, Ultimate Humongosaur, Ultimate Cannonbolt, Ultimate Echo Echo, Ultimate Wildmutt, Ultimate Waybig, and Ultimate Wrath. The latter of whom would never get used by Ben. On screen at least. Additionally, Ben would hypothetically have ultimate forms for his other aliens. Ultimate Heat Blast, Ultimate Diamond Head, Ultimate Ghost Freak, Ultimate Jet Ray, Ultimate Chroma Stone, Ultimate Brainstorm, Ultimate Goop, Ultimate Alien X, Ultimate Merc Upchuck, Ultimate Lodestar, and Ultimate Nanomech. Again, Ben could have used these ultimate transformations off screen, but there's no indication that he has. This goes for any further ultimate forms that he unlocks later on, so I'm not going to mention that aspect. Ben would scan by Valvin in order to unlock Water Hazard, adding the Oroshan DNA to the codon stream. Additionally, Ben should also hypothetically have Ultimate Water Hazard. Ben would spontaneously re-unlock Forearms. Additionally, Ben should hypothetically have Ultimate Forearms. Similar to Heat Blast, there's a theory that Ben re-unlocked Forearms by scanning fellow Tetraman Manny Armstrong, although I don't see any evidence for it. I personally don't believe that Heat Blast and Forearms were re-unlocked in this manner, based on 2 factors. A, I haven't seen any evidence for it. Apparently there was a writer's statement for it, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. I'm not denying that it exists, but I personally can't say I've seen any evidence for it, and so I'm not going to use it. And B, I've seen no such claim that Ben re-unlocked Accelerate in this manner, despite the fact that Manny and Alan have a teammate who's half akin to Solaran. Also similar to Heat Blast, I'm personally of the opinion that Forearms was re-unlocked in War of the Worlds Part 2. I'm not confident that that's when Ben re-unlocked Forearms, but I think it would be an easy way to explain how he unlocked Forearms, but also it wouldn't be the first time that the Omnitrix spontaneously unlocked an alien. Ben would scan Galapagos in order to unlock Terraspin, adding the Geocoloniario, adding the Geocoloniario, adding the Geocoloniario DNA to the codon stream. Additionally, Ben should also hypothetically have Ultimate Terraspin. Ben would scan Pandor in order to unlock NRG, adding the Pripyatozin B DNA to the codon stream. Additionally, Ben should also hypothetically have Ultimate NRG. Ben would scan Andreas in order to unlock Armadillo, adding the Taupaden DNA to the codon stream. Additionally, Ben should also hypothetically have ultimate armadillo. The Ultimatrix would scan Rad, when Rad would use his electrical abilities to possess the Ultimatrix, and as a result, the device would unlock Amphibian, adding the Ampere DNA to the codon stream. Additionally, Ben should also hypothetically have Ultimate Amphibian. At some point off-screen during the episode, Ben would scan a Pisces for land in order to re-unlock Ripjaws. Hypothetically, Ben should also have Ultimate Ripjaws.
We mainly know that Ben re-unlocks Ripjaws in this way due to a writer's statement from Dwayne McDuffie. Of course, it could be disputed that Ben unlocked Ripjaws this way, but given that he appears only 2 episodes later, I think it's fine to note it like that.
At some point prior to this episode, Ben would have Kevin modify the Ultimatrix so that Alien X, and by extension Ultimate Alien X, would be locked, and could only be accessed by special keys owned by Kevin and Gwen.
Note that this has to happen at least after Season 1, Episode 5, Escape from Agrigor, as you can see Alien X's hologram in that episode. Then again, I've also seen people try to argue that the reason why it's green instead of black, like usual, is because Alien X is locked, but I don't know if I believe that. In an attempt to find the titular Forge of Creation, Gwen and Kevin would re-unlock Alien X. And by extension, Ultimate Alien X.
Ben would block Alien X as well as Ultimate Alien X off screen again. During battle with Eon, Eon would blast Ben, as Weybig, with his time rays, disintegrating Ben. As a result of the Ultimatrix's safety precautions, Ben would survive, but Weybig's DNA would be destroyed and removed from the codon stream, removing Ben's ability to transform into Weybig and Ultimate Weybig. During that same battle with Eon, Ben would be blasted again, this time as Ultimate Swampfire, destroying Swampfire's DNA and removing him from the codon stream. After defeating Eon, Ben 10,000 would restore Weybig and Swampfire, as well as their ultimate forms Ultimate Weybig and Ultimate Swampfire. Furthermore, Ben 10,000 would also re-unlock every alien that Ben has ever had up to this point, aside from Alien X and Feedback. Specifically, this includes Accelerate, Grey Matter, Stinkfly, Upgrade, Wildvine, Blitzwolfer, Snarrow, Upchuck's perk variation, Frankenstrike, Ditto, Eye-Guy, and Arctiguana. Additionally, Ben would also hypothetically have ultimate forms for all of them, with 2 of them even being used by Albedo. Specifically, Ultimate Accelerate, Ultimate Grey Matter, Ultimate Stinkfly, Ultimate Upgrade, Ultimate Wildvine, Ultimate Blitzwolfer, Ultimate Snarrow, Ultimate Perk Upchuck, Ultimate Frankenstrike, Ultimate Ditto, Ultimate Eye Guy, and Ultimate Octaguana. Ben 10,000 would also unlock multiple new aliens for Ben. And while I would imagine that would include most aliens introduced in Season 3, the Ben 10 wiki would only list Clockwork. But I'll mention where relevant the other aliens I think were unlocked here. Additionally, Ben would also hypothetically have Ultimate Clockwork. Also, given Ben 10,000's wording of a few new aliens, I'm going to include at least 2 unknown aliens here. Again, I'm pretty sure that they are aliens that we know and will see, but just for now, they're unknown aliens. There was one more alien mentioned by the Ben 10 wiki to have been unlocked here that I personally would have agreed with, but unfortunately in the time that it's taken me to edit and record this video, another writer statement has come out saying that no, this alien was unlocked in a different manner, which also does make sense. I'm just salty that I have to do more work around it. Ben would unlock new alien, Fast Track. Off screen in this episode. Allegedly, at least. Officially, according to a bio forum on the menu of a DVD, Fast Track was unlocked off screen in this episode. But personally, I think it makes more sense if he was unlocked in Ben 10,000 Returns, based on the fact that it feels weird that Ben 10,000 unlocked a bunch of new aliens, only for the next new alien we see not to be one unlocked by Ben 10,000. On the one hand, I can kind of understand why, given that in Air Day order, basic training comes out before Ben 10,000 Returns, but also, the people behind the scenes should know that Ben 10,000 Returns comes first, and as such, it would make logistical sense for Fast Track to have been unlocked in Ben 10,000 Returns. Also, it goes without saying at this point that Ben would also hypothetically have Ultimate Fast Track. Ben would scan the titular, yet unnamed, prisoner number 775 in order to unlock Chameleon. Hypothetically, Ben would also have Ultimate Chameleon. Additionally, the Omnitrix mentions that Chameleon would be available on Playlist 5.
DNA scanned and recognized. Merlini Sapiens, unlocked and available on Playlist 5.
Which works with my notes, revealing that while Ben doesn't implicitly have more unknown aliens, there is a capacity for a maximum of 4, with these 4 also potentially being available during the Omniverse flashbacks, like Spitter, for example. Or, some aliens that I think should have been unlocked in Ben 10,000 Returns. I think it also goes without saying that Fast Track is probably either unknown alien number 5 or 6. In case that wasn't clear enough. This episode is kind of odd in this context. So, the arachnid chimp named Simeon would bring a group of parasitic aliens known as xenocytes to his home planet of Arachnosemia. If you're a vague fan of Ben 10, you might remember that xenocytes are the things that turn people into DNA aliens from Alien Force Season 1. As a result, the xenocytes would go rogue and take over most of the planet, turning most of the arachnid chimps into DNA aliens. Somehow, this corrupts the arachnid chimp DNA sample in the codon stream, removing Ben's ability to transform into Spider Monkey, and by extension, Ultimate Spider Monkey. There are still uncorrupted and alive arachnid chimps, so I don't know why the DNA sample would get corrupted. Especially considering that at least 2 of Ben's other transformations at this point are, or at least were, extinct. Reminder, Cannonbolt species is 100% gone as far as we know, while Diamond Head species was reduced to just 1 dude. but was eventually revived. I just realized too, technically chromostone species was extinct for a bit too. Side note. So, Ben, Asmuth, when are you guys going to restore the Arborian Pelorotas? So the Arachnochimps are mostly corrupted, and our heroes, plus side character Eunice, spend the episode trying to scan an Arachnochimp in order to restore the DNA sample. I've already covered how logistically Ben shouldn't have lost Spider Monkey, but we've already covered that. On top of that, the heroes are trying to use Eunice's ship to scan an Arachnochimp. But that's also something that the Ultimatrix can do. Also, Gwen and Eunice prepare to scan Simeon, because he's the last Arachnochimp left apparently, but Ben transforms into Spider Monkey before they scan him. Maybe the scenes are just played out of order? Either way, Ben has Spider Monkey again despite not realistically having lost him in the first place. Ben mentions in this episode that he has 63 aliens.
How many different aliens can you turn into now? 50?
63.
Meaning that, by my count, there are roughly 17 aliens unaccounted for. Or are just simply unknown aliens. That being said, we can assume who a couple of these aliens are. First of all, I think this includes the two other aliens that appear later on in Ultimate Alien Season 3, as their unlocking isn't really all that defined. And secondly, this may also include Spitter, as well as other non-canon or pseudo-canon aliens. At some point in between this episode and the previous episode, Ben would unlock Gravitack. Under unknown circumstances, and also unaware to Ben. Basically, as of this episode, Albedo, who I mentioned earlier, gains the ability to transform into aliens without the need of any sort of Omnitrix device. But, according to Word of God from Derek J. Wyatt, he's limited to aliens that Ben has up to this point, which, to me makes sense. Then comes along Omniverse Season 4 Episode 10, For a Few Brains More, where Albedo transforms into Gravitack, and as a result, retcons that Ben has Gravitack at this point. Then Wyatt would backtrack on his statement saying that Gravitack specifically makes him unsure as to whether Albedo can gain more aliens, which, my brother in Christ, you wrote the show. Either way, I'm considering Gravitack as being unlocked here. Also, I don't consider Ben to have had Gravitack prior to this episode, or considering him one of the unknown aliens from the previous episode, namely because Ben doesn't know that he has Gravitack until his debut in Omniverse. It is kind of an unfortunate placement that in the episode where Ben gains 17 unknown aliens, it's only the next episode where he gains another alien that he doesn't know about. Then again, maybe Ben does have Gravitack prior to this and just doesn't know about it. It wouldn't be the first time. Also, this does open the door for other aliens that Ben has in Omniverse to have been unlocked at some point in Ultimate Alien, or even Alien Force, now that I mention it. Finally, Ben does also have access to Ultimate Gravitack, although he never uses him, but Albedo does. In this crossover with Generator X, we would get the debut of a new alien, Shock Squatch. Basically I, as well as at least the Ben 10 wiki, were under the indication that Shock Squatch joined Clockwork and maybe Fast Track as one of the aliens unlocked by Ben 10,000 back in Ben 10,000 Returns. This script was originally written and recorded with that assumption in mind.
That wasn't until one day I saw a writer statement from Duncan Rouleau, who is also one of the creators of Generator X, as well as Ben 10, stating that Rex, under the notion that Ben is an Evo, would attempt to cure him. Short recap for those who don't know Generator X. Generator X takes place in a world where there was an explosion 5 years prior to the beginning of the series, causing a series of microscopic robots called nanites to get into the bloodstream of every person on the planet. These nanites cause some people to spontaneously mutate into creatures called Evos. The main character, Rex Salazar, is an extremely powerful Evo, able to cure other Evos. This is a recap provided by someone who hasn't watched Generator X since like 2010. Rex's attempt to cure Ben would infect the Ultimatrix with Rex's nanites, and, as a result, would accidentally unlock Shock Squatch. I'm not sure of the logic there, but I also don't know enough about Generator X to dispute it. Hypothetically, Ben would also have access to Ultimate Shock Squatch. Additionally, this crossover takes place at some ambiguous point during Season 3, and as such, Shock Squatch could have been one of the unknown aliens mentioned in the Flamekeeper Circle.
So make way to start a revolution. Make way, we're gonna have fun tonight. Make way to start the revolution. So make way. So make way to start a revolution. Make way to start a revolution. So make way.
In this episode, we would get the debut of Edel. I'd say it's all but confirmed that Edel was unlocked in Ben 10,000 Returns, also likely accounting for one of the unknown aliens from the Flamekeeper Circle. Also, Ben would hypothetically have Ultimate Edel. In this episode, Ben would be captured by the titular Inspector 13. While hacking the Ultimatrix, Inspector 13 would unlock Master Control by accident, unwittingly giving Ben access to over 1 million aliens.
Accessing Galvin code.
Ha! Good luck hacking the Ultimatrix. You'll never... Firewall 1 breached. Firewall 2 breached. Firewall 3 breached. Yeah, okay, but there's no way you'll get Master Control access. Master Control access granted.
In order to undo Inspector 13's damage, Ben would reset the Ultimatrix, blocking Master Control.
Ultimatrix hard reset. Hard reset in progress. Ultimatrix reset.
In this episode, we would get the debut of Jury Rig. I'd say it's all but confirmed that Jury Rig was unlocked in Ben 10,000 Returns, also likely accounting for one of the unknown aliens from the Flamekeeper Circle. Also, shocking known at this point, Ben would hypothetically have Ultimate Jury Rig. After having saved the day once again, and proven himself worthy, Azimuth would take away the Ultimatrix, in order to give Ben the newly completed Omnitrix. With this new Omnitrix, Ben can no longer go Ultimate, but as a result, he now has access to Alien X again, as well as a couple of new aliens. Ben gains access to Blocks, Crash Hopper, Ball Weevil, Topic,
Astrodactyl, and Gut Rot. Note that these aliens were never locked in the new Omnitrix, at least according to a writer statement from Derek J. White. Additionally, I think it's possible that these aliens were unlocked earlier in Ultimate Alien, especially after Inspector 13 when the Ultimatrix reset. If Gravitat can do it, I can't see why the rest of these aliens can't. Topix, specifically, is an alien that I think Ben unlocks sooner, because he's the only one out of these that Ben uses for the first time and doesn't immediately say something along the lines of, "Whoa, a new alien?"
Whoa, who's this guy? New alien! Cool!
Whoa! This is a new one.
All right! I always wanted to be one of these. Whatever they are. Okay, who's this?
Another note that I just remembered while recording is that Diamond Head goes back to just being a normal Petrol Sapien without any Crystal Sapien parts. Another thing to mention too here is that, ignoring later retcons, one might assume that Arctiguana and Gravitat were unlocked here as well. After the Omnitrix is damaged by the villain Dr. Psychobos, Ben's allies Bluekitch and Dreeba would attempt to fix the Omnitrix, but as a result would instead trap Ben as the new alien, Walker Trout. Bluekitch and Dreeba's second attempt to fix the Omnitrix would get Ben stuck as the new alien, Pesky Dust. Bluekitch and Dreeba's third attempt to fix the Omnitrix would get Ben stuck as the new alien, Molestache. Bluekitch and Dreeba's fourth attempt would get Ben stuck as the new alien, the Worst. Bluekitch and Dreeba's fifth and final attempt to fix the Omnitrix would be a success. It would be unfortunate though that at that very moment, Ben would get attacked by the villain Liam, who, in this episode, has been mutated to be a Vaxasaurian hybrid. At least on the bright side, with the Omnitrix now fully repaired, the Omnitrix would scan Liam, not only repairing his DNA, but also unlocking Kick and Hawk. Additionally, I vaguely remember there being a writer statement somewhere that stated that Kick and Hawk was among the aliens that were available with the new Omnitrix to begin with, despite this episode's clear cause and effect unlocking of Kick and Hawk. But the fact that I can't find that writer statement, I think just sort of disproves that notion anyway. After getting absorbed by malware, Ben would have a conversation with his younger self, and as a result would re-unlock feedback. Which, that explanation is all well and good, but what literally happened? Well, there are multiple writer statements that, when put together, reveal the full story. When malware destroyed feedback, he absorbed a tiny, itty-bitty little piece of both Ben and feedback's genetic code. Destroying feedback removed his conductor DNA from the codon stream entirely, resulting in all Omnimatrix devices being incapable of adding conductor DNA. When malware absorbed Ben, Ben reconnected with that little piece of genetic code that malware absorbed, and that was what Ben was having a conversation with. Ben would then reconnect with the piece of feedback's DNA, reabsorb it, and transform into him once again. Azimuth would give Ben the code to unlock Bullfrag off-screen.
Ben would supposedly gain the alien Buzz Shock, when he would be unlocked by the episode's villain, Phil. Now, in the episode, Phil is using his electrokinetic abilities to manipulate the Omnitrix so that Ben can only transform into aliens that also have electrokinetic abilities. Frankenstrike, Amphibian, Feedback, etc., etc. Because Ben has too many aliens with electric abilities. This would include Buzzshock's first appearance, but also, there's no indication that Ben didn't already have Buzzshock available. Ben just didn't know that he had him, which is hardly the first time this has happened. Ben still doesn't know that he has Gut Rod at this point, for example. Ergo, I'm of the opinion that Ben already had Buzzshock, likely gaining him in the Ultimate Enemy Part 2, although he could have also been unlocked at some point during Ultimate Alien Season 3. Okay, similar to Buzzshock. In this episode, Azimuth would supposedly unlock new alien atomics. I say supposedly because, all Azimuth does is press down on the Omnitrix's dial, same as Ben would to transform into any other alien. Ergo, I'm of the opinion that Ben had atomics earlier, same as Buzzshock. Given that by air date, Max's monster comes out after For a Few Brains More, you could argue that Ben unlocked atomics then Buzzshock. Another thing to mention with atomics is that there's a theory, or I guess general assumed fan canon that exists, that atomics' unknown species is actually the quote-unquote Preputozan A, a sister species to NRG's species. I personally don't believe it, and I personally don't believe there's any evidence for it beyond the fact that both species have radiation abilities. But, again, Ben has 6 aliens that have electric abilities. 9 if you want to stretch it. So I don't think the two species are related. Ben would scan the recently resurrected Lord Transil in order to unlock Vampire. This makes for another species that Ben could arguably, and should, revive using the Omnitrix. Shortly off screen, prior to the events of the episode, Ben would attempt to transform into Jury Rig in order to fix his motorcycle, the 10-speed. He would mention that he transformed into multiple other aliens, including some he never knew he had.
I turned into aliens I didn't even know I had.
To me, that wording implies roughly 3 new unknown aliens. Whether these minimum 3 new aliens were unlocked here, or whether they were unlocked previously, is unknown. Additionally, Derek J. Wyatt would mention at one point that one of these aliens was the non-canon alien Ventriloquid, although he would later backtrack, later claiming it was a joke. As such, I'm going to leave it as Ben unlocking 3 unknown aliens, one of whom may or may not be Ventriloquid. And that was every alien that Ben either lost, unlocked, or re-unlocked. It's been a while since I've seen Ultimate Alien and Omniverse in whole, but I'm in the middle of a rewatch at the moment, and just in case I've missed anything, I specifically watched the relevant episodes, hoping that, if I did forget anything, I'd be reminded, but I think I got everything. Maybe after I finish this rewatch, I might make a second version where I polish up any errors, and who knows, I might include some non-canon aliens, or other Omnitrix wielders, like Van 10,000. Who knows? We'll see. You can also see a link down in the description below that takes you to a spreadsheet that I made that showcases when every alien is available, just in case you couldn't piece it together from this video. But, just in case you want to see, how long each alien is available. Just in case you're curious. I was originally going to include it at the end of this video, just a quick, Heat Blast was available from X to Y, but, I couldn't figure out a way to format it in a way that I liked, so I just decided I'll make a spreadsheet, and if you want to look at it, go for it. With that all said and done, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.